Welcome to the SJ Child Show. Thank you for all your continued support. You can find us at sjchilds.org. Enjoy the show.
Good afternoon for some of you, evening, morning, whenever you're listening to this. Exciting to be here today. Today I have a new guest, Mark, and I didn't ask you how to pronounce your last name, so I'm going to let you pronounce it for me.
It's Chartier. I kind of Americanized it. It's French Canadian, but I say Chartier.
I like it, Chartier. That's what I was practicing, so I was right on. Right on. Good. Well, it's nice to have you here today, and you were recommended by a really great friend of mine, Jimmy Apple, who has another wonderful podcast, Apple a Day. So those of you who haven't checked out an Apple a Day, go over and give Jimmy Apple a listen to and follow his podcast as well. Mark, I'm really happy to have you here today, and you are a special ed teacher, if I'm correct. We
Yes.
haven't we haven't dove deep into this yet, so I'm just going off of hearsay, if you will. But it's great to have you on to be able to kind of hear your side of what happens, in this world of autism and in special needs classrooms. What do you think? What would you say has been your biggest lesson on this journey?
My biggest lesson on this journey has been that all students can achieve and be successful in life, regardless of disabilities, as long as they have a can-do attitude, as long as they try to persevere and have determination and work hard. Me growing up, I had Tourettes growing up, and I wasn't diagnosed, and yet I struggled in school with behaviors and academics, and I was able to overcome and persevere thanks to positive relationships that I had with educators. And when I say educators, I don't even mean just teachers. I mean any various people in the school system.
Yeah.
And so that would be another thing that I would say to kids is focus on those positive relationships that you build in schools, because those relationships can be so important. I know they were important for me growing up with Tourette's, and at the time I didn't even know I had Tourette's. But they really inspired me to turn my behavior around, to work hard at school, and to persevere and overcome my challenges.
I love that. What a fantastic lesson. And we'll learn more about that as we go on to this conversation and find out more about you and where are you from? Let's start at the beginning. Give us an introduction and then we'll dive deep into how you got there.
Okay, great. So I was born in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And then I grew up for the most part in Long Island, New York. I lived there from about age 4-ish to until I was 15, and I was raised mostly by my dad because my mother had schizophrenia, and when I was 7 years old, her and my dad divorced and went through a real difficult ordeal with her, kind of coming off the hinges mentally speaking. And so my dad raised me, and he did the best he could, but he was sometimes real hard. He had a lot of rage at times that a lot of times he took out on me and my brother. But at the same time, I was a challenging kid. Like I said, I was a challenging kid. And so we moved to Colorado Springs when I was 15 years old. And again, all this time I'm having symptoms of Tourette's, and it's undiagnosed. Like no one knows why I'm doing these things. No one knows why I'm doing the tics that I do and the twitches that I do and making the noises that I make. And I moved to Colorado Springs, had a really rough year and a half, just acclimating to the new environment, because obviously New York and Colorado are much different dynamics, like culturally and whatnot. And so I got into a lot of trouble. ended up getting in a fight, and then I took a swing at the athletic director who was breaking up the fight. Um, in my eyes, I was shrugging him off because he grabbed me by the neck, but I definitely could see how it was perceived as a swing. And I got into a lot of trouble, committed a lot of vandalism to the school. And then I was remanded to detention for all my free time. And of all people in the school system, her name was Mrs. Tracy. She was the detention lady. She was someone that formed a mother-like relationship with me and really inspired me to turn my behavior around. And so I was relegated to spending all my free time in detention for the rest of that year. And then the next year, because of my relationship with Mrs. Tracy, I still went in there and hung out with her and saw her, even though I didn't have to be there. And and so from there, I pulled it together somewhat, started doing a little bit better academically. I was diagnosed in my senior year, and which was kind of a blur because I was trying different medications at the time, which made me very groggy and very fatigued. And so I remember doing a lot of sleeping in class.
Yeah.
And then I graduated with a poor GPA. Got involved in a very toxic relationship. And a couple years later, I decided to move south to Pueblo to attend college at what's now called Colorado State University, Pueblo. And funny story, I initially was rejected. I was denied admission, and I was really desperate to get out of the environment I was in with the relationship I was in. And I called them and I said, "What can I do to make you reconsider?" And they said, "Well, take the ACT again, and if you get a better score, maybe we'll consider it." And so I took the ACT again, and I got a high enough score where they admitted me on probationary status. And I made the most of that opportunity because even though it took me about 6 years to graduate with my BA, I did go on to graduate with my BA in English, and then I went to grad school and got 2 master's degrees in education.
Wow. Congratulations.
One in special education and the other in curriculum and instruction. And so I like to think I made the most of my opportunity.
It sounds like you did. And what a fascinating and vulnerable story. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah. I sustained a brain injury while I was an undergraduate. I was working at a restaurant and I had an adverse reaction to oven cleaner. And so I sustained a toxic brain injury, which I didn't find out about until 12 years later. But I knew something changed because my Tourettes really increased in severity and I had to trip on my medication. And I also started stuttering very significantly. And so as I was close to graduating with my bachelor's, I thought to myself, I'm not ready to go out into the big bad world just yet. And so I thought about going to grad school to hello.
That's okay. I ordered your chips already. Yep, this is my friend Mark.
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you, buddy?
He said, how
nice
are
to
you?
See you.
Okay.
What grade are you in?
Oh, there he goes.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah, my husband got called into work today, so today was just kind of a free for all.
Oh, you're funny. Hey, I work with kids all day. I'm happy to see kids on the weekends.
It's kind of my joke. Like the spectrum doesn't stop because I'm doing a podcast, you know?
Absolutely. Hey, the more the merrier.
Yeah, the teaching moments.
Yeah. So as I was pondering about grad school, I thought about what do I want to do? And I thought about the people that made the biggest impact in my life, and those were educators. And so I decided I wanted to go get a master's degree in special education to help kids that had similar struggles as me.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so nice when you put your passion towards something you've had personal experience in. It can bring such a wide variety of possibilities and opportunities for you and for those that you're going to be working with and bringing all of that. That's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, it sounds like having that kind of knowledge brought to you at such an older age, what was it like to go back and look over your childhood and kind of piece together those parts of your Tourette's possibly that affected you that you didn't know?
Um, well, when I first found out I had Tourette's, I was almost 18 years old, and it was very stunning to me. I was kind of in a state of shock. I didn't talk about it. My dad and my best friend in New York were the only ones that knew about it that I told. Obviously my dad knew, he was in the doctor's office with me, but my best
Yeah.
friend was the only person I told. Um, and um, and I didn't want to talk about it, not even to my dad. My dad would talk to me about it, and I just clammed up. I didn't want to talk about it. But I remember like a real sobering feeling of like, hey, like all this stuff that I've done over these years has a name. And I remember thinking, there's something wrong with me. There's something different about me. There's something defective about me, which is totally the opposite of what I would tell someone today, right? Like
Yeah.
today, I tell my students, hey, we're all different. We all have differences in this world. And I find that I learn the most about life from people that are different from me, whether it's because they have a disability or they have a different political affiliation or a different sexual orientation or a different religious affiliation. Those are the people that I learn most about life from, is people that are different from me. And so I teach my kids. I have a saying: always believe that you can make a difference, but never let your differences keep you from what you believe. And so I
Mm.
teach them that every day, and that's kind of the motto when I give speeches at conferences and universities and schools. That's kind of my tagline for my speeches is embracing diversity and not letting it stop you from accomplishing and reaching your goals and dreams. Because people that knew me when I was 15, 16 years old would have never guessed that I'd be a teacher. Like I was literally a teacher's worst nightmare. And I'm not saying that uh, just because I'm on air and just because, it's my interpretation. Like I'm sure if you could go back to teachers that had me, they would say I was really, really tough. And I can tell you, after 15 years of being in education and working with some kids that have serious emotional disabilities, some of them, um, I was by far worse than any student I've had.
Yeah. My husband grew up in the detention system and the criminal detention system, actually lived there in group homes and wilderness programs through his entire childhood. And so I kind of think of it as like the lost children. Then he is now has, a not formal autism or Asperger's diagnosis, autism as well. And so it's interesting now that I can kind of look over I wasn't there, but look to what I know of what he's told me in the last, 20 years that I've been with him, what he's told me about himself. I can really see those those things that people missed that would have been life changing for him. And it wasn't until, like you said, he was 19 and going to have a baby that he decided he needed to get his act together and divorced his ex-wife and got his act together and all of this stuff. But it takes almost like you go through a lifetime of learning, and sometimes it's really grieving to having to go through those things. And
Yes.
I can
Yes.
understand
And
that.
and I'll share something with you that I don't share with on every podcast I'm on, but when I was a child, I want to say I was about 8 years old. I was I suffered some sexual abuse from someone. I won't say who, but I suffered some one event. It was only one event, but whether it's one event or 100 events, it's still traumatic, right?
Absolutely.
And that person is no longer in this world, and it's something that, you know, as the years go on, it's actually gotten harder to process and deal with. And how I've attempted to process it is through writing poetry. I don't know if you know this or not, but I have a book of poems.
Let's talk about that. Yes, tell me about that.
So I try to process a lot of my emotions and my experiences, as well as those experiences of my teaching, through poetry. And I had this book that I've been working on. It was a culmination of poems that were about 10 years old. And it's called Fingerprints. And maybe I can give you a link to it in the show notes.
Love that. Please, yes.
But I had this book published, and I actually just recently had my second manuscript accepted for publication too, and that's going to be called Crosshairs. And in that, I delve a lot deeper into some of my trauma. In this book, there's some trauma, but in my new book, there's, like, I really dig deeper. I felt like it was a deeper dive than even this book.
Peeling back the layers, huh?
Yeah, but in this book, I was gonna read one poem from this book, if that's okay, and then a poem from my new book. And I can read a poem from this book that dealt with an experience where I went to see a neuro ophthalmologist who was probing into my brain injury. And so this poem is called Comfortable, and I'll go ahead and I'll read it. It's like, it isn't like I thought it'd be. The room doesn't feel like a wet box coming in on me. The air doesn't have a smaller scent, and blood isn't rushing to my hands in a nick of panic. I'm in this doctor's office. He's holding a silver pen to the right of my face. Look at the pen, he tells me. Tell me stop when it's in front of your nose. He keeps repeating my answers to his assistant. Write that down, he says to her. I tell him about the medications, the oven cleaner I inhaled 10 years ago, the car accidents, the closed head injuries, and the doctors, each dressed in a different white. He already knows my handwriting sucks, and that I have trouble staying in between the lines when I drive, that I bump into people when I walk. He already knows I apply most of my weight on my left foot on the outer edge when I walk. He asks if I think the floor over there is level. Maybe. If the wall over there is straight or curved. Curved. Definitely curved. Write that down, he says again, his arm in a sling, as he motions for his pen again. He tells me to sit in the in those chairs over there. You'll be more comfortable in them. There's something too familiar about a doctor sitting in arm's reach from you with his hands in his pockets, saying that you have a traumatic brain injury. With a fortune teller's smile, he says the brain is like an orb of toothpaste, and that when it's pushed against the skull suddenly, something happens, something uncorrectable, like you're 0 for 5 in a game of one strike. There's a sense of gravity to hearing something you've really known for 10 years, turning your chin to the ceiling, like you're too good for this, too good to be this comfortable, sniffing as if you don't really care, him still playing his trick with his pen. Stop, I say when it's in the middle. He brings the pen to my face, and it's about a half inch to the right of my nose. Every time, he says, every time.
That's incredible. That's a really interesting way to be able to talk about your experience and, you know, explain how you were feeling through those moments.
Yes. So I went to this doctor, because I was still in the process of seeking answers after the oven cleaner. And where it eventually led me, because I really questioned the authenticity and the genuineness of his diagnosis. So I kept probing and I kept searching. And eventually I was directed by a neurologist to get something called a SPECT scan, which measures the blood flow in your brain. And it's supposed to give a diagnosis for brain injuries and other conditions like OCD and ADHD. And when I got that a few years later, it revealed that I had a toxic brain injury and a traumatic brain injury. Now, I had a heart condition. I still have a heart condition, but I was born with coarctation of the aorta, which is basically a clogged aorta. And I was born as a purple baby, as a blue baby, not purple, blue. Sorry, as a blue baby. And so there's some conjecture, and of course this was back in the 70s when technology wasn't as advanced as it is now. But there's some conjecture that I possibly had my heart condition when I was in the womb, and that might have obstructed blood flow to my brain even back then. So
fascinating how our bodies work like that, and I always like to, part of my autistic brain, I always like to dive deep into how the systems of the body connect and how everything makes it happen. So I think that that's really fascinating. I love neuroscience, in fact, so I like to study on that kind of stuff. What type of inclusion do you bring to the classroom or to the school with your classroom?
Well, I generally pull small groups for intervention. And I've had a lot of good success. I know a lot of people say that special education services should be mainstreamed and serviced in the general ed classroom. However, my experience has been that kids really enjoy that small group time, going somewhere special, somewhere that they deem special. And I can honestly say that every kid, they go back to their class and they feel loved and they feel cared for and they feel nurtured. I do this thing at the beginning of each group called Good Things, where we talk about one good thing in our life. And I have a little song for it. It goes, and something good, woo, woo. And we go around the group and we share one good thing in our life. And that's so important for kids to recognize that, because some of these kids are dealing with divorce, they're dealing with domestic violence, they're dealing with drugs in the home, they're dealing with poverty, they're dealing with all kinds of different factors. And so I really think it's important that kids get that small group / one-on-one time to be able to express their concerns and express themselves. And I've actually had general ed kids come up to me throughout the school or whenever I go to the classroom to pick up kids. They always ask, hey, when are you going to pick me up? I want to go with you too. And I said, well, it's not that easy. I can't just pull random kids. But
yeah, right.
But I definitely feel like kids see coming with me as a good thing.
I love that.
And I don't pull them a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. They are mainstream for most of the time. Their least restrictive environment is usually 80% or more in the gen ed classroom. But there's a lot to be said for that 30 to 60 minutes a day where they're with me and they get to express themselves and they get to put themselves out there academically without fear of being scrutinized or laughed at or chided. Because I'm very well known for my patience, and I set up a loving atmosphere where that encourages students to take risks.
Yeah.
And all my kids know that. And I think all my kids feel safe in my classroom.
Oh, I love that you said that. I think that that's a really important value to have for your students, and parents, students alike want their kid to have a safe classroom experience no matter where they're at, So I think that that's really special.
Yes, yes. And actually the other poem I was going to read here, I'm talking about good things. The
Yes.
title of it is called Tell Me Something Good.
Love
Woo-hoo.
it.
So,
Perfect. Go ahead.
do you want me to read that
Yeah,
now?
please do.
Okay. So this is about my experience with a student I met about 2 years ago. I was teaching remotely because I was high risk during COVID. And so I was teaching remotely, and I had this other student whose name is Vance, and he has muscular dystrophy and autism, and so he was high risk as well. And so I would meet with him every day for almost a whole school year, and we would do good things, and we just really connected. And then last year, I was at his school, his brick and mortar school, briefly for about 3 months. And then something happened, which is explained in the poem, so I won't give it away. But this is basically my experience with Vance over 2 years ago and last year, and coincidentally, I'm his teacher again this year. So I've definitely come full circle with him. So this is called "Tell Me Something Good." To Vance, who will change your world someday. I know, because you've already changed mine. The first time we met was through a Zoom meeting, your two front teeth tapping your smile as you shrugged your shoulders tough, your eyes ballooning to meet your first male teacher, which you had long wanted. We're going to do something called Good Things, where we talk about one good thing in our life. Ready? What's your good thing, Vance? And as the months of the COVID-19 pandemic fevered through schools, we were both staying safe through remote learning, where I would share my screen to have you read sentences adapted from the reading curriculum. Mr. C is sad because he does not have hair on his head, you read. Don't be sad, Mr. C. You're perfect just the way you are, you ordained, woke sapiens surging as you surveyed my nervous tics. In front of every disability is a person working hard just to level the playing field. No, Vance, you're the perfect one. You're perfect, like a hand reaching to forgive, because you don't let your Ulrich muscular dystrophy or autism keep you from living your life like a blank check. The maker and auditor as somehow leaving I quit in the shadows indemnified. You love as a love should, and and you never let your physical challenges sully your aplomb. A spoonful of honesty people couldn't buy even if they tried. Can you tell me a joke, Mr. C? What's Barbie's favorite state? What? Kentucky. The next school year, we were both in person again, and I transferred to your school. When you first saw me in the hallway, you asked me to pull down my mask, and you remembered all the virtual high fives over Zoom. I told you we were going to work together again, and you were so happy you told the other sped teacher, I love Mr. C. The other sped teacher soliciting, what about me, Vance? Don't you love me? Your eyes triangling up at him. Just Mr. C. And we read about Ping Pong Pig fixing the farm, why Sophie shouldn't get angry, and reverenced about the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie, in between you asking me to lower your standard. My legs hurt. But before every lesson, you'd sing our song, Tell Me Something Good, woo, woo, and wait for me to tell mine. As Christmas break approached, I couldn't bring myself to tell you that I'd resigned from the school district. I caterpillared past you in the hallway while your brigade of support was strapping you into your stander. The belts, buckles, and Velcro alchemizing agitation from amity. And I wanted to pretend you weren't clapping at my soul as you cried, I just want to walk again. Your words aggregating between the deified symmetry of happen chance and must. Every minute's a new minute. I kept walking back to my classroom. My eyelid toiled to a twitch, neck ticks insurrecting, and my cognition fogged from the Klonopin withdrawal insomnia. I said a prayer, able by the shared looks of everyone that meets your glow with grow, that the world will look at you and witness the raw genius of perseverance, apex with the thunder of now. All along, my real good thing was that I got to be your teacher and that I could never feel sorry for myself again. You are the butterfly of souls.
And I'm so glad that he's in your class again so that you guys can keep pushing each other and, helping just light those flames around you with your bright one.
Yes. I actually read that poem about a month ago at a poetry reading, and I specifically invited him and his parents to attend.
Oh.
I thought it would be so special to have him there as I read it.
And how'd that go?
It went well. It went so well. It was a very special moment. Very special moment for me as well as him and his family.
I'm so glad you shared that with us. Wow, that's amazing. Well, I am really glad that we got this opportunity to talk. We're going to have to invite you on again to talk about some more classroom ideas and things and, be more topic oriented next time and find out some more things because I want to find out some more. You sound like you have great ideas and wonderful ways you engage your students, and I want to pick your brain now.
Sure, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe once my new book comes out.
Tell us about, you said that is there an Amazon link? Is there one that's self-published now?
So this book was published by a press in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
A poetry press that called Word Tech, and they have different imprints, and this is done by their imprint that prints narrative poetry. And this one is available on Amazon and on their website, and I can send you those links.
Yep.
And then my new book is through them as well, and that's probably around a year or so away from being printed.
Okay.
But the new manuscript is kind of mostly poems since that book to now. So it deals with a lot of pandemic stuff, some social justice stuff, some other things that I dealt with as a kid and experienced that I wasn't quite ready to delve deep into when I conjured up this book. And so that book explores a lot of those things. This book, I would say, has more poems about my mother, whereas my new book has more poems about my relationship with my father.
Okay.
Which was often complicated at times,
Well, it sounds like it. Yeah, definitely. Wow.
I mean, I think like when I look back at my dad, like I do really believe he did the best he could. But he was kind of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at times. Like there were times where he could be laughing and joking with us at one moment, and then the next moment he'd be unglued and he'd be beating the crap out of us, So definitely, but he had a lot to deal with, and I don't want to discount that, and I don't want to discount that I was an easy child to raise because I wasn't. But at the same time, like I know my dad he was a recovering alcoholic. And to my knowledge, he never drank while I was alive. But at the same time, he wasn't going to AA at the time. And so he had what a counselor told me was probably dry drunk syndrome, where he experienced a lot of rage and a lot of erratic behavior because he wasn't managing his addiction, which was probably still tormenting him very much so at the time, even though he wasn't indulging in it at the time. So
yeah, well, that's too bad.
But I do give speeches about the power of positive relationships. As you can see, I'm a big relationship guy. And I speak at universities, I speak at conferences, I speak at schools next week I'm actually speaking at a church. So I'm really excited about that.
Good.
And, if anyone's ever interested in checking out my website, I have a website that hopefully we can post in the show
please.
notes as well, but it's www.teacherwithtourettes.com.
Great.
And if anyone wants to say hello to me or send me a comment or ask a question, they can subscribe to my website and they can contact me through that.
I love that. No, we'll definitely have that information available to everyone in the show notes. And yeah, we really thank you for your time today and your vulnerability and your story. I'm really excited to have made this connection with you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Sarah.
We'll talk to you soon.